Welcome or welcome back. This is Pierce World Knitting. I'm Jennifer, and this is a knitting podcast all about knitting, yarn adventures, and travel. Thank you very much for joining me today. In today's episode, we are featuring a traditional knitting podcast with finished objects, whips, and a little non-traditional because we're going to have a little chatteroo about my very first knitting pattern that's coming out. I'm thrilled. If it's not out this very second when you're clicking and watching this episode, it will be out within hours today. It is for the favorite Fingerless Mittens, and I'm thrilled that I get to share all about it with you. How fun. Okay, what I'm going to do in today's video is I have two primary finished objects. I have a lot of other finished objects that include the mittens because I've been down this entire mitten journey. So I've been knitting up mittens like cray. Sure. So let's move on. Let's do all of this. So first of all, we're going to talk about my finished object that I am wearing. And today she is the Champagne Cardigan. This is a cardigan pattern that's designed by Petite Knit. Very popular. It really, I think, hit home with a lot of people and podcasters in 2023, myself included, and was my very first cardigan I ever knit. I'm going to talk about all the mods too, though, don't worry. The yarn I chose was Fleece worsted. This was in the colorway Sockeye Salmon that I had purchased well on a trip to New Hampshire on one of our down east trips at Deisgns, and fell in love. I purchased 3 cones. Not really sure the meterage on it, but basically this cardigan used just under 2 cones. I have one gorgeous little cone left. Cone knitting is my jam. Okay, so, oh, and I do want to talk about the fabric, of course. She is gorgeous. Like, let's enjoy all of this. Got little tweety bits of like fuchsia in there, white, yellow, orangier. It's great. It's a great time. She's been getting a lot of wear, this cardigan. Let's get started with this journey, and I will try to be concise as I can. I started off knitting the extra small or the smallest size in the cardigan, recognizing 2 parts. This is my 2023 knitting brain and process, and if you've been here for a bit, you know we're a little different now, we're growing as knitters and becoming a little more mature, so I went with the smallest size. I knew it was a boxy, bigger, longer, bulkier cardigan. I decided that I wanted a different look and a lot less seams, a lot more cropped. That was one huge modification. The other was that my gauge did not match, but I pressed on anyway because this is exactly what I envisioned for this cardigan and yarn pairing. Again, this is not correlating with my 2024 knitting intentions. So I pressed on using a size 6 needle for the body, US 5 for the ribbing, and it didn't work. Shocking, because I have 2 less stitches on my gauge count than the recommended pattern. And if we know anything about knitting and gauge, then that would not work, and it didn't. So what I did is I ripped out and recalculated the entire pattern to match a gauge that I was getting and knitting on with the unrecommended yarn, and 2, to get a leaner, more like less ease look that I had intended, because you know that's what I was doing in 2023. So we cast on 6 less stitches. You cast on at the back high neckline, and you basically work from there with your German short rows. And yes, I did do German short rows, which is absolutely my new preferred short row method, and finding great success in that. And you begin doing your increases right away for your raglan sleeves. Great. I had to decide how many increases I was going to do and where I was going to begin choosing to do my increases. So basically, and I did not write this down, I did increases on both body and shoulder for most of my increases as per pattern as well. However, when I got to a certain spot later on, I only increased at the body, if that makes sense, not just at the sleeve, to get more fabric at the front and back, but I didn't need additional fabric that was going to be created for the sleeve. There we go. Massive mods already. Other mods I did, of course, was knitting this much shorter than intended. Obviously the lessees part, I was having issues with the sleeves. The intention of the design with the boxy silhouette that's created by the cardigan is mirrored by very voluptuous sleeves. That wasn't working for the shape that I had wanted. So with the help of our lovely knitters and viewers here and some other podcasters, I ripped out the sleeves that I had done and re-knit. I only picked up 2 stitches at the underarm and basically started rapidly decreasing on the sleeves so that I would get, I feel, a more balanced look from sleeve to body and body to sleeve. Yep, a lot of mods. I wouldn't even go over every single number of mod, but it was a lot. I picked up for the button band according to the pattern, and there are fabulous videos if you've never done a cardigan nor a double knit button band, which this is. I highly suggest hitting up the Petite Knit website. There are videos that obviously you can purchase the pattern, but the videos are available publicly that you can check out and follow along, and they're fantastic. That's what helped guide me for the button band, which was my first button band plus my first double knit button band, which, I mean, if I do say so myself, she's pretty gorge. So it was, I mean, it was mine's on for sure because I've never done it before, but found it very satisfying. There was technique for every single piece of this. There was a technique for the cast on, which was a knit rib alternating cast on. There was a video for making the buttonhole itself. And weaving those ends in, very detailed, extremely helpful. There was a detailed video for how to sew on a button. And again, I've done sewing and I thought, okay, no big deal. Like, I'll just do this, but I'll watch the video for fun. No, technique after technique, even a technique of threading your needle, which again, I never knew this technique was available, and it created such a beautiful sitting button. So I'll show you. It's like a little, I don't know if, oh, it's hard to see, like a little nup of additional fabric from the yarn that's created to push that button out and have it really be nice and stable. Like, look at this, just gorgeous work. And I mean, I'm saying gorgeous work is my work. I'm crediting Petite Knit for all the techniques that I was able to literally follow along with. You're pushing the button out so that it sits flush because that double knitting obviously is creating 2 layers of fabric, and wool fabric can be chunky. And it doesn't pinch in, if that makes sense. What I did do differently as well, and I highly recommend different cast-offs outside of just the Italian cast-off world. It is not my preferred method ever of casting off. Even here, I didn't even go over. I did bind off in pattern, so I did a knit over purl bind off, which is another preferred method of mine. But for here, it wasn't going to work. So what I did, and I don't know if you can see there, but it's pretty clean. I used a technique from Rook, or is it Ruka Knit? I'll link whatever I can find online below. She's on Instagram and I'm following her. She's got different techniques for cast-offs. This cast-off was a sewn cast-off or sewn bind-off, but did not replicate Italian. It was very simple. We are basically inserting the needle through 2 stitches, and then on the second round, you're inserting the next 2 stitches, but this stitch is coming off your needle. So every time you're inserting your needle, you're inserting it knitwise, but the last stitch is falling off your needle. And it's a pretty tidy cast off, I have to say. And didn't involve Italian, which I can't do. So that was good. I have been wearing the cardigan. Things I would change for next time is absolutely not recalculate for the entire pattern, because that's ridiculous. I've paid for a pattern and I feel like I've put in way more work and time into the recalculation and thought and process of design into something that I've paid for. So 2024, Pairs World Knitting Jennifer is saying, no, we're next time, if there is a next time for this cardigan, we are choosing obviously very different yarn, or I will choose this yarn, for example, but a different pattern to meet the gauge. And if there's something that I want that has a very different look, example, less ease, I choose a pattern that hosts less ease. Not rocket science, but it's sometimes it takes doing until we realize. The second portion, big takeaway for me of what I would do differently next time, is the highest button placement. This is very much bothersome to me. I included 4 buttons as per the pattern design, but because my sweater is so much more cropped, I think obviously it needed only 3. When I close my button up, sorry if it's making noise, it closes it awkwardly. It pinches in the raglan stitches. It makes the underarm look funny and feels like it doesn't fit well. It's too high on the neck. It's not good. So I leave it open. A little more, risque. Sorry, I've got to sort myself out. A little more risque, if you will, but that's it. So yeah, will I be knitting a cardigan again soon? Not soon, but I will. But we will be doing so a little more with 2024 knitting intentions that are just a little more responsible and a lot less issues for myself to streamline it. And so I get to enjoy fully the knitting process as well as the finished garment. That is Champagne Cardigan. Next up on the finished objects list is, and sorry, I've been wearing this to bed, of course, is the Framework Bralette. This is by Jessie made Designs. This was a whip that was featured in my whip parade, and this was something that was on my needles for, I don't know, gosh, a year plus maybe. This is a beautiful design. I'll hold it up this way, maybe you can see, of it gets its name very well as a Framework Bralette because it really creates this beautiful framed triangle garment that is just, it's fun to knit. It's a quick knit. I knit this using one strand of a Sunday, I think it's called Double Sunday, thank you, by Santa's Garn. This was in that orange and fun knit. I had paused on this knit because where I was knitting the triangle piece where you come from round, knitting them round, and I was getting kind of one gauge and one beautiful tighter looking fabric. When I had changed to knitting flat for the triangles, my gauge completely changed and looked rubbish. Where it was very holey, it just looked mucky. So I pulled that out. I re-knit, knowing I had to knit tighter, so I kind of reefed on that Double Sunday, and it worked out. I didn't have to change needle sizes, although that was recommended by our viewers, and thank you for that. I-cord was no big deal. Bind off. So you bind the 2 I-cords together to join. I find for me, this is the second time making this garment. This is not, like for me, this is not pretty, but I wear this to bed, so I'm not that fussed about it. Yeah, and she gets a lot of wear. I'm wearing it obviously not just to bed, but she was a good one. So that is the Bralette, Framework Bralette by Jessie Made Design, and I did no mods, I don't think, on this. What? Yep, it worked. Small size. Yeah, cool. Finished object. Okay, I'm debating. I'm like, do I talk mittens? Because there's heaps of finished objects there. Do I talk webs? I'm gonna go mittens because they are finished objects. I've tried to classify this in my mind. Okay, let's talk about this. So I started knitting now called Favorite Fingerless Mittens for years, and I had started, actually maybe this is how I'll start. I started with a worsted weight variety. I was actually, here's a story. I was knitting at a cafe with a girlfriend who was dabbling into knitting, exactly what I had in my mind. So I knew I was knitting this tube, but the thumb, I knew I just wanted a hole, but I wanted a really clean hole. Wasn't sure exactly how to get there and continue in a tube. I basically wanted a stockinette fingerless glove that I could put my thumb through. And talking it out with her, and I feel from there I started creating favorite fingerless mitts. These became something that I adore, as you probably have seen, putting together with my outfits. Spring, fall, and then later temps in winter. I've given these as gifts often, and they're easy, they're quick, they're fun, and this was all part of like my aesthetic, my wardrobe. So I've had people since podcasting coming out to say, hey, you know, how do we do this? What do we do? And it only really, I felt perhaps ready to create a written pattern, because as we know, doing the kinesthetic tactile piece of knitting can look very different than translate it into words on paper. And it did. And it created, you know, even though these are crazy simple, that challenge for me of a different style of communication with this. And this was it. This was how the favorite fingerless mittens were born. This is the worsted weight, just sharing. These are the simplest, and I think these are the oldest version I still have. It's 2 strands held double of Ramafino, and obviously these have been kicking for years. I have given a number of them away even as I've been wearing them and people comment. So this is, I think, my oldest pair to date. Yeah, these are, I should talk about the gauge. I should talk about the pattern, and then I'm going to show you all of these. So the pattern that is available currently, if it's not, like I said, it'll be available in a couple hours. It'll be hosted on Ravelry and Etsy, and it's a paid for pattern. It is 2 patterns, essentially, or 2 gauges that are housed in one pattern. So how it's going to work is that you have the one pattern available, a big table of specs that dictate, you know, if you're knitting with worsted or have a worsted gauge, or if you're knitting with bulky, here are all the things. The whole thing for me, as you may know, with patterns is that I do not want to feel limited. Therefore, in creating this specific pattern, I didn't want to limit the knitter whatsoever. So I wanted to give 2 different gauges with one pattern. So the worsted is an 18 stitch count for 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The bulky, and I'm going to be talking about the bulky version in a moment, is 14 stitches per 10 centimeters or 4 inches. And I find that that even gives you a really nice range. This pattern is available for not only 2 different gauges entirely. I'm going to talk about yarn options in a moment, but it also 3 different sizes. So it's got a first, second, and third size that range from 18 centimeters, 19, 21 centimeters is the largest, and inches, we're looking at 7, 7.5, and 8.25 inches of hand circumference. So with that, I got to talk about yarn choice, because again, I want you to feel that you can knit into your dreams come true and not limit you. So in the worsted, I give 4 options of yarn choice. One is 1 strand of worsted, of course, held single, just one guy. I have an unspun option for the worsted that we've tested. It's one strand of unspun with 1 mohair. We have options of 2 strands like this guy. Held double of sport. This is a Ramafino specifically. I'll talk about this little doodad in a sec. Or 3 strands of fingering held together. Of course, however you get gauge makes sense. I've recommended my loosey-goosey knitting needle. Might not be for you. And in the pattern, I have a, sorry, I have a 3.5 millimeter needle or a 4, US 4. That may or may not work for you. Again, it's however you get the gauge. And pretty much those are the worsted version. I've added on, and this is the whole thing, like I never want to limit myself in my knitting creativity. So I've added on, these are my second oldest mitts. I've added on little flowers, and I can always link that video that I used to get the little flowers on there. These are a hit. Every time I wear them, people adore because there's just that extra little bit of fun. So we've got super plain. I've added on flowers for fun. It's exact same pattern, just adding on a little extra flair. These are again Ramafinal. These are the worsted weight, so 2 strands held double. These are the newest ones, so these can count as a finished object. And this was all scrappy yarn that was left over actually from other fingerless mitts that I gave away. So we've got just one like chunk of scrappy here. This is the Briggs & Little Sport held double that I used in my Amy slipover. What I did here is I'll share again. This is like not in the pattern because the pattern is like the jumping off point for your creativity. I did one, what's it called? One row of knitting to get the cream kind of break. And then I did one row of purl. Yes, I did one row of purl to get like a little bumpy factor. Can we see it? And then I alternated with the mauve. The mauve is again a Ramafinal, and just enjoyed that because I think even this option of breaking it with a different color can allow you to use different scrappy yarns and just add a little more fun and option as you're going. So those are technically a finished object. Talking about the bulky version now. So again, all one pattern housed under the same thing. Bulky, we're looking at a 14 stitch gauge. And for this Loosey Goosey knitter, I used a 5.0 millimeter needle or a US 8. Again, both options, or I should say all options of the pattern, offer you to knit with obviously magic loop, with DPNs, or with shorties, whatever works for you. It's a small, little circumference in the round, so you do what you're comfortable with. There's instructions for all of it. And sorry, I'm just gonna put these on. Again, options of yarn choice, because I never want to be limited, obviously, in my yarn choice with what I'm knitting. So I gave 4 options for this. This is actually the very first version that I came up with for the bulky. And this was 2 strands held double of Nutidin with some leftover mohair I had. This was literally at the time, this was like 26 grams of Nutidin that I had, that I was like, what am I going to do with this amount of Nutidin? It was a lovely little gift from a friend, which is awesome, but it's such a small quantity. Hello, favorite fingerless mitts. This is what happened. So this is how this version was born. Just a recalculation from the worsted. And then of course I have other options because, obsessive knitter. So same stitch count. These are the large size. And that was the other thing I wanted to knit, a lot of different sizes. Our testers, I've had 2 groups of amazing testers. I haven't talked about that. They've done an incredible job with different yarn choice with their creativity too. So I will definitely share about that in a moment. This is 1 strand of bulky. This is Elephas Sloppy, and this is the smallest size. So these for, since the fall, and I wear them a lot. They've grown, but the large and then the small. And yeah, and different lengths, of course, because I have a recommended length amount that you can knit the mitt to, but obviously you do what you feel. And this was because I was limited by yarn, but I feel like it's a fun little look. Okay, another option, and yeah, this is similar to the Elephas Sloppy. This is 1 strand of bulky held single, but the color on this is Atlantic. It's a yarn by Briggs & Little, super Canadiana. I've showed these in a podcast already, and I want to say they're all my favorites. Like children, you can't choose a favorite child. I don't know. like baby, and super rustic and fun. I made them a little longer. I still have quite a bit left over. This was left over from a hat that I ripped out, and they're great. I've been wearing them all the time. Which ones haven't I shown? Oh, and then these. So these are 2 strands of unspun. This is 2 strands of Plutalope. These are coming from my wild posy that I just finished. And this is in the smallest size. And then I added nups to the knuckle. I mean, I think this is it. Like, just, it's so much fun and crazy easy. I added an up like every other row on the front, and hello, again, like not massively hard, but like has a fun effect. Other options, of course, for the bulky, we have, what am I missing? Oh, the fingering. So we talked about the 1 strand of bulky. We've talked about the second option being 2 strands of unspun. Then we've talked about the 2 strands of Nutidin, because it is often thinner with mohair. And then we have not talked about the fingering. So 4 strands of fingering yarn held all together. Again, get engaged. That's it. My gosh. Talking about the testers have knit, again, combination. So we've had 2 groups of testers. We had a worsted edition that I sent out to testers, and they were the second group, actually. I started with the bulky test call, and this was for the bulky edition. And during this time, I decided to, again, house these 2 gauges or editions under 1 pattern. The testers were just a delight. It was my first time organizing a test knit ever. I put out the test call, not really knowing, of course, what to expect. I've never done it before. I do not have a reputation, of course, of pattern design, nor of running a test knit. And I feel beyond lucky that I was able to work with knitters that did tests for me, that just have the kindest hearts and are so great at communication. Thank you massive to all my testers, of course. We have had all of the bulky edition testers finish. They've completed their feedback forms. I was able to extract their feedback and apply it into the pattern to make it even more clear and hopefully simpler to follow. My worsted edition is, well, you see this, they will have wrapped up and done the same. And so I feel like even running 2 different test groups, if you will, for the same pattern essentially was really beneficial for me as a first pattern and pattern design. I so value their feedback, and it will be apparent as well in the written pattern with you. I've done something a little out of the box as well, because I felt it was my first pattern, and it was such a joy to me, the entire process. I really wanted more for these testers, rather than, which is still, it's what I did. I thank them very much, of course, in the communication that we had. But I will be hosting a little knit and celebrate on the weekend that I'm really excited for the testers to attend, because it gives us the time to actually meet, even virtually. We're coming from different parts of the world, and we're hosting under 1 spot where I actually get to tell them thank you for testing. And I feel so lucky again that I feel accepted into this community, but that I'm also feeling a great part of not only being part of the community, but helping create some of this community, at least in my world. So goodness, I couldn't feel happier and thrilled. So this is a time, again, on the podcast, I will say thank you to each and every tester. I think it really has opened up my eyes in the most beautiful way of pattern design, and again, offered such positivity into the knitting community. So thank you from the bottom of my heart, my knitting heart. Lovely, thank you. Okay, we will now get into whips, and I will do that as efficiently as I can. I've brought 2. Of course, as a naughty knitter, I might have other whips, but we won't bore you with those because they have been on the needles for way too long, that were from the whip parade. So we will do this. I will talk about, I'm going to talk about this one. This one's the older of the two whips. So this is the Moby sweater, Moby pullover by Petite Knit. I'm going to try to show you here, and it is an overall cable work sweater and faux cable sweater that is knit from the back, picking up at the shoulders and knit in the round eventually after the arms or sleeve holes. This is the junior size. I'm knitting with piece fleece again, ironically, in, I believe it's just a natural ecru colorway. It is the worsted weight, and it's been a delight. I was on a roll knitting over the holidays on this. I think it was the holidays, January. What are we in? March, January, and loving it. But then, of course, got so sidetracked with all the other things like the mittens, and you'll see my next whip. So those were more taking priority. She's a stiff knit because it's a tight gauge. This is exactly kind of the fabric that I had envisioned in my mind. And we're using the Petite Knit Moby Sweater Junior for size because I was afraid that I would be knitting the sweater too large, and I didn't want it to be extremely bulky. I've done try-ons and we're sitting pretty so far with this. Super happy with how it's turning out. It is like the sheepiest of sheepy smells, which makes my heart sing. So that's great. I can't wait to finish it one day, but I'm in absolutely no rush, and I actually am really enjoying the process of knitting this. So I'm sure you'll hear about this again. That's the Moby Sweater Junior by Petite Knit. The next up and last whip I'm actually going to be talking about today is a really special one to me. And this is a wild posy. This is my second wild posy. And if you remember, I knit my first and only ever wild posy using 2 strands of Plutalope in that light ash gray. This is extremely different. And again, I don't want to be bound by yarn choice. And so I didn't want to limit myself. Oh, I've got it backwards. Sorry, I'll do it this way. So this is a wild posy by Melody Hoffman. It is a top-down sweater construction of texture and lace work on the yoke. And this is 1 strand, and I will show you. Oh, she's a little mucky because she's been on the floor. This is 1 strand of Biche and Bouche Le Gros Silk and Mohair. This was gifted to me by the gorgeous ladies at Biche and Bouche. It's in the dark red colorway. It's a little not pleasant with this color, so please don't mind that. Hopefully you can see in my Instagram because it's really a stunning colorway, and it is just such a gorgeous combination of yarn. I was really intrigued to try out a mohair that I could knit with held single. For me, different, I think, barriers like a time bind off, like adding in different details that maybe you're a little more time consuming or brain powery, but especially 2 strands held double of, say, a lace weight silk mohair combined with something else like a fingering or whatever. It is okay, and it has a time and place, and I always love the fabric that's created, but I like to streamline, and one of my top personal values that holds true to this day is efficiency. To me, if you are looking for mohair, a mohair option, and being efficient in your knitting using 1 strand, you may have to consider the Gros Silk Mohair. It's a dream to work with. It's a dream to look at. Like, this fabric is glowing. I hope it's coming out. I can't really tell in the video. It literally glows, and I'm in love with it. I won't go into tons of detail with the sweater because, of course, she's not fully done yet. But basically, I've been following pretty much the, look at me, I'm like, I'm going to only follow the pattern. Pretty much the pattern. And yeah, the gauge, from my memory, I'm pretty sure I'm getting the gauge that was recommended by the designer, which is really bizarre, and it technically doesn't make sense. Sorry, I've got so many other things. because I use the 2 strands of Plutlopi, but it's creating a really obviously different fabric than the Plutlopi. So I did the size 1, the first size, and I'm not regretting my combination of yarn nor pattern choice, and it's just going to be a showstopper. It's, yeah, I wish you were here to squish it. Here's what I do want to say, because I've been traveling quite a bit again and bebopping from one place to the next, that even though this is a sweater and now we're coming up to finishing sleeves, I'm able to smash this together, smush it into a project bag and still carry it with complete ease because it's compact, it's super light, and that's kind of another beautiful thing about it. If I may, my favorite fingerless mitts, or mittens I should say, these have been traveling with me everywhere too, and I think this is why I've knit up so many different pairs since the test knit hit. Like these were all knit within, I don't know, weeks, a month maybe, I don't know, as like a travel commute knit for me because they're so tiny. So I feel like my love of variety and option and freedom and no limitation has really resonated with both of these options, the mittens and of course this stunning yarn and pattern combination. Okay, we're in knitting love right now. A little coupe d'amour of knitting love. I hope you're there with me too. I want to thank you as always for joining me today, and I very much invite you, of course, to like and subscribe to the channel. So happy you're here, so happy you've come back, and I love to see the little comments from people. I enjoy reading them and replying, so I hope you enjoy sharing or asking questions as well. If there are any questions, of course, about the mods I did for the sweater, let me know. Any questions about anything, the biche and bouche yarn, the patterns that I'm using for that, about the mittens perhaps, just holler, and hopefully I can be a helper. And yeah, if you are feeling even a little more curious or wanting within you to click further, I invite you to click below on the Ko-Fi link and consider donating a coffee to myself. In addition, of course, now, if you are curious, I definitely invite you to go to Ravelry. I will include a link once it's live for the pattern for fingerless, the favorite fingerless mittens. And this is it. Perhaps this is how you would like to support myself and the channel, is with a little purchase of the mittens. I'm not sure, the mitten pattern, maybe. I hope we see a lot more favorite fingerless mitts out there, because I have to say, every time I've been seeing them, even with our testers, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled they're out there and other people are enjoying them too. So I hope you find great joy in your knitting, and until next time, take care.